I don't use the microphone? Or do you want me to use the microphone?
I think you should.
Use the microphone? Okay. Can I have the clicker, please? So welcome to the zoo. How was your tour? Very good. Good. We had a really beautiful night for it. I'm really glad that y'all could come out and see the elephants and part of their new habitat and see what we have going on here at the zoo. It's nice to be here when it's quiet and a nice evening. We're just wrapping up from a big summer. We had concerts, so if anybody went to a concert, you got to see the elephants right next to your new habitat. We had about 40,000 people come to our concerts and over 500,000 visit the zoo this summer. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to design and construct. Andy will go over that in the state's #1 paid tourist attraction and how you keep the zoo open and running while doing so. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of the zoo bond program and what that entails, as well as our vision for elephant lands. Emily will go over the master plan for the zoo, how we really try to coordinate the site and all of our future projects over the next 20 years, as well as conserve resources. And then Andy will talk to you about how you construct and care for animals, rock stars, kids, pretty much anybody that comes into the zoo, and how you try to manage a big construction project like that. So the Oregon Zoo has a vision to have the world-class elephant exhibit really allow our elephants to have choice. That was the #1 primary reason that we wanted to have a lot of diversity in the habitat along the way. A lot of what you'll see here tonight is a little bit redundant maybe with what we saw on the tour, but hopefully it'll sink in a little bit more. We really focused on the health and welfare of the animals, and we wanted to make sure throughout the habitat that they had the choices and options to do and be where they want to be. So giving them free range to go where they want to go and have mud wallows and pools and forested areas where they could be. This was a commitment that we made to the voters. So in 2008, the voters approved the Oregon Zoo bond. So that was $125 million to upgrade the infrastructure and the exhibits at the zoo. And our commitment there was to provide better care for our animals, make sure that they had access to resources. We were reusing our water and conserving energy, improving our water quality. I don't know how the other tours touch on this, but water quality and water use is a big deal at the zoo with all of the pools and the aquatic animals. So conserving water on site, and then increasing access to conservation education. I'll go over how this is all panning out in our various projects. So the first thing we did was hire SRG to help us create a master plan. So we knew how we were going to spend those funds, what the sequence of funding would be, how that fit into the full site plan. The zoo is a 64-acre site. We are clearly constrained with Highway 26 and a landslide hillside right next to us. So really having to map out how we were going to develop. SRG and the design team worked with us to kind of create a full site plan for how we want the zoo to look over the next 20 years. So this points out all of how the zoo will look. This half of it is being covered by the zoo bond funding. So the $125 million covers the first 10 years of the zoo master plan investments. The projects that are included in the zoo bond program, we're about halfway through. So you can see there's a list up here. They're really in consecutive order by when they're happening. But you saw on your tour that we completed the Veterinary Medical Center. That was one of the first projects we had to do for animal welfare. We needed to make sure that we had a good place to take care of our animals. One of the second projects was making sure we had a good water management system and then water conservation system for penguins. For those of you on my tour, I don't know how if anybody else talked about this, but the penguin exhibit was upgraded with a water filtration system because we used to dump and refill that pool twice a week, and now we're doing it maybe twice a year. So we've saved millions of gallons of waters there. Condors of the Columbia, I pointed this out along the boardwalk. Hopefully some of you got to see the condors. That was a new exhibit that's really focusing and trying to bring to light the conservation of the condors and how their habitat is, or how they're being imperiled by lead bullets. So bringing those condors on site. We're in the middle of elephant lands, and then we're now designing our new education center, which focuses on the conservation education component and commitment to voters. If you've ever brought your kids to camp here, if you've ever come to an event or an education or a class here, this will be your new kind of headquarters for that. It's going to be a beautiful education village area. So we're really excited to have that. That's over by the tigers and where the train route is, where you get on the train. We round out our projects with upgraded habitat for the polar bears, and then primates and rhinos. So we are currently scheduled to finish these projects in 2020. It's about 6 more years of construction. Here you can see our budgets are preset. So we have budgets that were approved by the Metro Council. You can see that Elephant Lands has the largest budget by far. It is the biggest undertaking we've had at the Oregon Zoo, and it also includes more than just the elephant habitat, as you saw on your tour. The infrastructure for the train, the service road, what am I missing? One more element. Wildlife Live, relocating, a lot of habitats were relocated, rerouted. So there's several components to that. Here you can see what we walked through. If you had a map, this is the map that you were looking at. And so we'll go through with you the specifics of each of those habitat areas and leave you with just the fact that this is the most ambitious project the zoo has ever undertaken. And it's something that we're deeply committed to. We're very excited. It will be open in October, roughly around October 2015. So we're more than halfway done, and we're very excited to be able to share with you where that's at. One of the things it's done for us is really brought guests along. We surveyed the regional voters when we launched into construction, whether or not they wanted us to shut the zoo down and just rebuild it, or if they wanted us to keep it open. And by far people say keep it open, we want to be a part of it. And I think for kids particularly coming, this is actually my 3-year-old, they're very excited to be a part of the action. I mean, the construction equipment is a part of the attraction here right now. So we're trying to build off of that and bring people along as we make history here at the zoo. So very excited for you guys to be a part of that. Before I hand it over to Emily, I just do want to call out for those of you who didn't meet the other zoo staff. Jim, can you raise your hand? Jim Mitchell is the construction manager at the zoo, so he is managing all construction projects for the bond. So he's here tonight as a resource. And Andrew Forbes is one of our project managers on our on all of our zoo bond funded projects as well. I'm going to turn it over to Emily to go a little bit more deeper into the master plan. Please know that we are open to questions throughout the presentation tonight.
You say that at the end.
So I want to go into the master plan a little bit. The master plan team is the same team that did the elephant project, and we're a multidisciplinary team from all across the country. CLR Design, the zoo exhibit designers in Philadelphia, interpretive designers from Massachusetts, and the life support designers from San Diego. So we really, we've all been working at the zoo for about 4 years now, starting with the master plan. And as you know, we're in the West Hills of Portland, right along the Highway 26 with the landslide areas that Heidi mentioned. So there's really, it's a constricted site. We didn't have a lot of room to expand, even though there's a lot of sort of undeveloped area. It's both very steep, landslide prone, and conservation areas. So you can sort of see there's a zone of the area, zone of the zoo that is native soils, but mostly it has been developed, and you can sort of see the landslides along the edges. This is a slope stability diagram, so the darker the color, the more difficult it is to build in that area. Now keep this map in mind when you look at the elephant habitat. You can see that we're covering a lot of the darker areas with the project. The zoo is basically organized around a ridge. The circulation is fairly organized around that ridge right now. Although one of the issues that the zoo is dealing with when we started the master plan was wayfinding for the visitors. A lot of people were having a hard time finding their way around the zoo, finding their way out. So one of our main goals was to sort of straighten out the organization, make wayfinding a lot clearer. So we organized the master plan around that natural ridge spine and created a much wider area with a series of wayfinding hubs. And each of those hubs contain visitor amenities, wayfinding, interpretive, and are anchored by a major bond project. So on the west side, the education center. In the center, the polar bear project. And then on the east end, the elephant project is the main attractor there. So we also used this spine concept as an opportunity to bring forth the major resource of rainwater that we have on the site and in our region. So bringing that to the surface and really sharing that resource and experience with the guests and using it as a wayfinding element throughout the zoo as well. So a series of stormwater planters that actually change throughout the season. So during the summer, when there are tons of visitors and filling up the zoo street, the water is less of an element. And in the winter, when there's so much rain, it kind of actually shrinks that zoo street down, so you have a little bit of more intimate experience and can sort of see how the rainwater moves through the site, which has some pretty significant topography. And so here's an illustration of kind of how that will come to be. We're able to, with the Elephant Project, start that language and start to use some of those stormwater exhibits as a way to sort of move visitors along the concert lawn and along the elephant habitat. We also looked at how to organize the zoo by continent. And really, when we looked at the master plan, we were touching all 64 acres, including operations, including the service road, and including the train. When we started to take a look at the major energy users in the zoo and realized that we had an opportunity with some of the opposing loads. Some of the exhibits, like polar bears, have a need for cooling, whereas elephants have a need for heating. And so we were able to think about energy at a district level, and as the bond projects start to plug in, that district energy system will become more and more efficient as those loads balance out. So the very first component of the geothermal system that will eventually tie into the entire zoo is a major part of the elephant exhibit. Underneath it, hopefully, while you were at the North Habitat, got a sense of the size of that geothermal slinky field, which is a sort of a horizontal slinky field. We also took a look at the water use throughout the zoo, and you can sort of see, as Heidi mentioned, that the bond projects are really going to take care of some of those major water users. And then, of course, stormwater, which is a huge, it's a huge component of thinking about slope stability. And as you improve more and more of the zoo, it becomes more and more important to think about where that stormwater goes. So actually, underneath the south habitat, we have a 70,000 gallon stormwater detention basin that can take the stormwater from the majority of the zoo and retain it during peak stormwater loading conditions. So I'll hand it over to Amy.
Thanks,
if anybody can't hear me, just let me know. And by all means, ask questions. So if you've got questions about the construction or anything we're doing out there or any of the slides that we bring up, don't hesitate to raise your hand and ask. If I don't know the answer, somebody in this side of the room does. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the construction team, and how we've been navigating through this construction process of the overall project. I'll talk a little bit about our team. It was delivered as a CMGC project. The selection was in 2012, and I think key to Lewis being selected as part of the project was really the passion that we showed for the project and the passion that we showed for the animals during our presentation, and the thought that we put into managing the phasing and what it was going to take to really deliver this project for Metro and the zoo. Major subcontractors that we've got on the job, and we couldn't do this project without a strong team of craft contractors. And one of the major ones is Goodfellow Brothers. I think everybody saw the extent of the amount of site work that we've got out there. We touch an incredible amount of area out there, and Goodfellows has done a tremendous job being a fantastic partner. Fauna is doing the caging and gate work, which is a very specialized scope of work. They're out of New York. They do all the sliding and hydraulically actuated gates. L&M Industrial Fabrication is doing the caging, which is the big heavy steel components that you saw that separated those areas. And Turnstone Construction is doing the sprayed on shotcrete the habitat walls and the soil nail walls. One I forgot up here is R&R general contractor. So you saw the amount of train work for the train realignment. And R&R was actually a partner of Lewis when we went after the project. And they really brought an expertise in the train relocation component. We worked through a number of options at the very beginning of the project trying to get the train alignment figured out, and they were really instrumental in managing the budget and the pricing options and what we could and couldn't do. So they should be up there too. It's a pretty unique project. 40% of the cost of the project is just in the site civil and concrete. So it's normally that number for site civil and concrete would be in the 25 to 28% range. 40% is a pretty high number. And so you can see the amount of concrete out there, the amount of structural steel, and the amount of site work. It's not a high-end finish. There's not a lot of high-end finishes out there. You've seen the shots of the area with the bridge leading up to the bridge that leads up to the elephant barn, and then Forest Hall, which is the pie-shaped area that we walked behind. Talk a little bit about design and construction. So right on the other side of this wall here is the service road, and here's a shot of the activity tree that's going to be built inside that big open office, or that open Forest Hall area. And one of the conversations that we've continued to have is animal choice and giving the animals access to activities all during the day. So this activity tree will be accessed through a catwalk system. It'll have a series of holes and areas for the animals to reach their trunk in and look for food or browse. They'll be able to hang browse off the top. It'll be a really unique feature inside that Forest Hall area. This also shows the level of Revit and modeling that we've used on the job. We've modeled all the components on the project with the help of SRG and CLR to really coordinate all of the different disciplines and all of the intricate scopes of work that we're doing out there. Oh, thanks, Jim. And so this shows you, that we're modeling all the different underground components, all the structural components, and all the architectural components together. We walked by one of the time feeders in the south habitat. When we're all done, there will be 21 of these timed feeders, 21 or 22, stationed around inside the building and outside the building in the habitat. And they drop food down on random intervals. There's one of them outside now. It was not intended to be a mock-up condition, but it ended up being a mock-up condition. You can see Sam. He's got his head leaned up against the bollard. We got the first one installed, and we had it all bolted down, and we had it closed, and the keepers came by and loaded it with hay. And so the animals are pretty used to coming into a habitat after the keepers have been in there, and the keepers just lay flakes of hay or grain or apples or something down, and so the animals come into the new habitat, and they go right to a little spot of food, and they just have their lunch. And this is a different model for them. This is randomly timed. The food isn't always available. It'll force them to move around the different habitats, always wandering and looking for food, browsing for food. So they weren't used to this, and so Sam would park himself in front of this thing and wait for he would hear the lever drop. And so when the platform would drop and the food would fall down, he would trot over there and pick the hay out of the bottom. And there's a screen on the bottom, you can see him pulling the hay out. That was too slow for him. So after a while, he realized that he could hit the bollard post, which is a structural steel wide flange beam that's buried 8 feet in the ground with a 4-foot diameter concrete post. And he would shake the feeder on the inside like a kid shaking a vending machine until the food fell out. And so we got a call from the keepers like, hey, you need to come over here. I think we need to tighten this thing down. So we realized that we need to make those really secure inside those cages so that Sam doesn't shake the vending machine. And one of the other things that he would do is one of the females would get a fair amount, and she would put it in her mouth, and right before she would eat it, he would reach his trunk over there and pull all of her food out of her mouth. So the keepers say he's kind of a pig. Here's also another shot of the extent of the modeling of the project. Air hand, yeah,
I got a question.
yeah.
That random feeding, are they just snacks and they get regular meals?
No, that will be, they'll have enough of them that they'll be staged through. They can load them with hay, they can load them with fruit, they can load them with grain.
The greedy ones get more.
Well, I think they would have to watch that and manage the time, sure, yeah. They have the ability to separate the animals and keep them out of certain areas. So here's again, another BIM modeling shot with Forest Hall and the elephant building. Lots of skylights in the elephant barn, so lots of natural light. Lots of natural light around the east face of the Forest Hall building, so there's going to be a lot of natural daylight even on the inside of the building when the animals are on the inside. Skylights here above Forest Hall, photovoltaic panels to generate some electricity, solar thermal as they use a lot of hot water and warm water, so we're going to heat solar thermal for some of our own water. But it gives you an idea of the extent of the modeling that we've done. There's a shot showing you an aerial view of where we walked today. We walked this road back here. Some came from the top and some came from the bottom. Again, this is Forest Hall with the elephant barn area right here. You can see down here where we were shooting the ravine habitat, and this is the area of the pool. This is the old building that'll be demolished, and then the edge of the transitional habitat, which will all flow up through here and connect when we're all done. So we still have a pretty extensive area and a pretty large amount of work to get done after we get the building done. Designing for elephant reach. We talked a little bit about this. 26 feet is the height. You saw those in the barn area. The ceilings were really, really tall, really high. They can stand on their back feet, put their front feet on the wall, and then reach up with their trunk. They can take down light fixtures and sprinkler pipes and ductwork and you name it. If it's up there and they want to take it down and it's within reach, they'll take it down. So one of the unique features that our team worked on as part of the process was to model the reach of the animals inside the building. So we overlaid inside the building what the reach ranges were in the different areas. And you can see that here in yellow. And anything that sort of came through the yellow was going to be in that animal's reach zone for that specific area. And so you can't see it quite here, but you can see a line here and a line here. This one we knew was going to be down. This one was a sprinkler pipe. And so we knew when we modeled this room and we saw the sprinkler pipe coming through that we had to raise that sprinkler pipe in that room. So we did this for all the areas that got animal ceiling reach range issue areas, and this is what came out of it. So pretty unique component there. Pretty good use of technology to manage all that and coordinate all that. Emily talked about how geographically spread out the team was. Ashley's in Philadelphia. TJP is in San Diego. TJP is our life support system building designer, the water filtration plant that we built. Pretty broad geographic range. We used a lot of tools, communication tools, to make that communication really effective when we couldn't meet one-on-one. We did a design assist door and caging package where we brought the door and caging contractor on early to assist us with that and help finalize those details and get them in the drawings, because it's a very specialized system with its own set of engineering standards. I can't tell you how many go-to meetings we have, but it's a lot. And then we also use a significant amount of Smartsheet, which is an online, essentially a cloud-based Excel spreadsheet. It's a very powerful tool. If anybody has not used it yet, you should look it up. Smartsheet's a company based out of Seattle, but it's a great product for sharing real-time information collaboratively with a team. We use a lot of Bluebeam Studio. In fact, our record drawings are all posted on Bluebeam Studio. So anybody that wants to access our record drawings is invited to our project on Bluebeam Studio, and they can access our real-time updated drawings from anywhere they have web access. So our guys in the field have, we have a computer out in the field in a box. They can get on the as-built drawings. Our guys in the office, our subcontractors, if they're in their job site trailer, they don't have to come over to our job site trailer to look at our set of as-built drawings anymore. Our as-built drawings are all online. They're all part of the Bluebeam Studio process. They can get right in and see it wherever they're at. That's a really good tool as well. Talked about the BIM modeling, and then again, Ashley spends a lot of time on Northwest Airlines. Thanks for coming, Ashley. A little bit about the products and systems. The door and caging systems. So the door package, it's not here yet. What you saw was the caging, this red mesh. The door package are these gray doors, and there's, Ashley, are there 40 doors? 42 doors. I think there's 42 either manual or hydraulically actuated doors, and that door package alone from the company in New York is a $2 million package. So $2 million for 40 doors, but they're elephant-sized doors, so they're complex and they're large and they're robust, and they're meant to function in an environment with elephant forces. We talked a lot about the walls and the soil support, challenging geotechnical site, getting the road cut in and expanding our road areas and our roadbed areas. So here, we talked about the geothermal in the North Habitat. Here's a YouTube video of the lay down and the extent of, oh no. Okay, give me just a second. I think I know what happened.
Oh, it's there.
Oh, there it is. So you can see and this is just a small part of the slinky well field. That's probably a little less than half of it that went up. And we buried it, bedded it in sand, and built that whole North Habitat with fill up on top of it. And in some areas, it's 14, 16 feet below the surface of the ground, which is a very constant 55, 58 degree temperature range. And so that is, that's one of the keys to making sure that ground source system works really well. There's another shot of it. This is a little bit of the North Meadow. That's the manifold system that connects it. When you walked up there, only this part is visible. So we didn't send anybody down in there to do any work. Talked a little bit about the barriers and gating. Here's one of the original doors of those 40 doors that showed up. This is a manually operated sliding door. It slides on these rollers. The keepers will unlatch it, unlock it, and then pull it open. There are also hydraulically actuated doors where they're run off a controller that will either open or swing open. Here's an interesting component. This is a windscreen and a barrier screen in the transitional habitat, and these are actually the logs that came out of the old elephant museum. So if anybody remembers that old elephant museum, it had these peeler logs that were part of the roof structure that went to the middle. And so CLR or SRG came up with the concept of, hey, can we reuse those? They're big peeler logs. So we salvaged all of the logs out of there and repurposed them in these screen walls for the animals. And if the keepers want to, they can unlatch the chains, pull all these out with the forklift, and open that habitat up if they wanted to keep it open all summer. But generally, they're part of the windscreen. I know SRG designed some of the other logs to wrap some columns on the site. So there was a lot of thought put into making sure some of those old components got carried through into the new construction. A little bit about the life safety system. So we walked by that nondescript CMU building at the bottom of the habitat, and inside that thing is a plethora of pipes and filters and pumps and settling chambers and all sorts of those components. Jason's here from J.H. Kelly, and they're it's their team that's putting those components together in that building. Series of drum screens where the dirty water comes down and gets filtered, media filtration components, and then pumps to get it back up the hill. But this also goes to show the level of detail that went to model all these complex areas. And it may not look like much in here, but some of these pipes are 24-inch diameter pipes coming down. And so 18 and 24 big heavy wall PVC and HDPE pipes. So a very complex coordination effort to get all those components stitched together. A lot of work up front in the modeling component to get that right. Emily mentioned the stormwater detention. Here, these are 5 feet tall. I mean, you can see how tall these are. This array was 2 layers deep. So this is the first layer, and then we added another layer on top of that. And these are about 60 feet long. This collects all the storm water as it comes off the site and holds it so that it doesn't, in a heavy storm, it doesn't discharge into the municipal system. So really thoughtful approach to managing the storm water on site. There's a lot of impervious surface up here at the zoo. It pushes a lot of water on a rain event into the municipal system. And this part of the project, this is under the transitional habitat. So when you walked by and the elephant herd was out there in the habitat eating and playing, this is underneath that. So this whole stormwater catchment system is invisible, but it does a really good function out there. We talked about the train work trestle. Let's see if we can get it to work. This trestle, some groups went by it, some groups didn't. This is the new train trestle design that's just outside of the habitat. It's a time-lapse video of the piers that we built and the train track trestle and the structural steel components that came through. I know Carrie was here from RF Stearns. They were the fabricator and installer for this component out there. Some really unique, large, heavy structural steel members. Larger than I've worked with in a long time. We'll also talk about the insulated concrete walls on our tour. A really unique component of the structure of the building. It's an 11-inch wide concrete wall, 3 inches of foam, and 6 inches on the other end. It's meant to resist the animal impact, but also provide the energy performance that's required of the building. The site and the shape of the building didn't lend itself well to a tilt-up. They're very tall walls. We cast them all in place monolithically, so if anybody's familiar with that, you know that it's a very complex wall to build. It's one of the signature elements. It's got a lot of form liner on the front face. We don't see much of that right now because it's on we always walk the job from the backside, but when it's open, it'll be a nice signature element of the project. Oh.
I think I'm going to need the mic. So I just wanted to briefly, talk about some of the unique wood products on the job. Cross-laminated timber is a structurally engineered wood system that's been getting a lot of attention lately. It's basically the same concept as plywood, where you have layers in opposing directions creating shear strength. But it's made with dimensional lumber, laminated in opposite directions, and made in panels about 40 feet by 10 feet. And so when we were looking at the roof of the East Hub building, which is just, the foundations are just being formed right now in the Elephant Plaza area. When we were looking at the roof of that building, we came across this material and loved it for its simplicity. It becomes its own structural system. It becomes the shear diaphragm for the building all in one piece. And it comes pre-cut. It comes with the skylight openings already in it, and kind of goes together like Legos, so it goes up really fast. It's really interesting product. It's actually the first use of it in Oregon. So it was a process that we went through with the city of Portland and our structural engineers, Equilibrium. We all got together and sort of worked through the engineering on this with them, and they were really excited to see it used in this way because it's a pretty small and simple building as well. It's about 2,000 square feet, and so they really liked it as kind of a pilot project for them. We're also using Accoya on the front of the building. You can sort of see the sunscreen in the front here. And at the entry of Forest Hall, there's an art piece that's also using Accoya. And the reason that we really like this stuff, it's a treated wood, but it's completely non-toxic. It goes through a process called acetylation, where it's actually completely all the way through affected by a sort of vinegar solution, which makes it dimensionally stable. And for a piece of wood, especially a softwood, a fast-growing softwood, that's pretty remarkable. So it avoids the kind of cupping, checking, cracking, warping that you would get with almost any other kind of wood. And because we're fastening it in sort of fins and on one side, we really wanted to make sure that it was going to stay straight. So we really loved working with Accoya. It's also something that I actually learned about it from a window manufacturer who's starting to use it a lot more. It's very rot resistant, insect resistant, and in fact, they've been using it in Europe and the Netherlands for dams actually in the water. So if you're using, it comes in pine or alder, and if it's alder, it's actually warranted underwater or underground for about 30 years. Above ground is about 50 years. So a piece of wood that's warranted is also pretty interesting.
Yeah. Phasing for the family herd. So one of the other interesting aspects about the project was our approach to the phasing for the project and how we looked at moving the family herd around the site while we were constructing all these different parts. That we talked about the ancillary projects or the associated projects, which was moving Wildlife Live, which is, if anybody's been here, they have the Wildlife Live shows with the birds and the ducks. And we had to build them a new facility because the road was going right through their existing facility. And so when we got that done, we got the road in, we had to build the transitional habitat. I don't know if they talked about this, but one of the key components for the elephant herd was that no matter what we did during the course of construction, we couldn't give them any less space than they already had. They shouldn't have to have diminished space or quality because of the construction of the new facility. So it was a big aspect of how we approached the phasing and how we approached the project, always making sure that they had as much square footage as they started with or even more. And so the first phase was to build that south transitional habitat where they're at now. We could then, once we got that done and operational, they were in there and were fine in that facility. We encroached, we basically cut down the back half. Let's see if I have it. We cut down the back half of their existing habitat, and then we were able to start the construction of the building. And when the construction of the building is done, we'll move the animals from their old building into the new building, build them a bridge or a conduit from the new building to the south habitat and the new building to the north habitat, and then we'll stitch together the two habitats. So at no time will they have any less square footage than they originally started with, which is a good thing, and we'll be able to work through these multiple phases to bring the habitats online with the animals there. This is a shot I put together. It just shows the scale of this habitat project with the amount of square footage at the zoo. You can see this is all zoo proper. This is back of house facilities area. We touch a lot. This project touches a large amount of the zoo. We have to be good neighbors. And Heidi was talking about rock stars. They have zoo concerts, and we're shifting gates and moving this and that for the elephant or for the concert series during the summer. And we're working with their operations folks for concerts coming up next year, and working with their vet med staff to make sure we've got areas open, and we're coordinating closures of different areas that we have to get to. So the logistics component that Jim's team and Wayne Starkey, who's not here tonight, he's one of the other zoo members that works on it from the zoo side. the amount of logistics and coordination that goes into a project of this scale on this site is pretty immense. And those guys spend a lot of time and energy getting that right to really minimize the impact to the zoo population and the visitors. That's really it. Heidi and Emily and I are here to answer any questions. This is my favorite slide. Must have been so good.
You actually did a really good job when you were talking about the central points, you know, as you, trying to think of what you called it, the way you laid it out. Bill and I, as we didn't make the group, but we made it through the zoo, and it was great. The different hubs you talked about. Yeah, we found our way, no problem. Yeah, just the two of us made our way from point A all the way to D. So it was really good. So when you were talking about that, I thought, oh yeah, we saw that.
We'll keep getting better too.
Yeah.
The water that you talked about collecting, how is that ultimately dispersed or?
It's dispersed into the ground, back into the ground. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gradually kind of leaches back into.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's actually, with my group, we talked a little bit about the finger drains that relieve the hydrostatic pressure from underneath the elephant building and the new retaining walls that are holding up the service road. During construction, the geotechnical engineer said, you know, hey, I think we should probably do a little more. And so we went in for a permit revision to create these new finger drains that relieve that water out below the retaining walls and out towards 26. So even during construction, in real time, we kind of had to adapt to the soil conditions.
So some people on my tour asked me about the elephants, and I'll just share with you a little bit. People said, well, how are they doing? They're in their new habitat. And, you know, Emily and I say, oh, they seem happy. You know, they're frolicking and they run out the gates. But really, we don't just say that. I mean, so we have a large research team that monitors the activities of the elephants consistently, both before they move into their new habitat during construction and then afterwards. So we can look for their activity level, test their cortisone levels, so we can really say, are we achieving the goals that we intended to achieve with the new habitat? And when we get all of this data, we'll be able to better, you know, communicate that story. So we do a lot of research and collection of data to make sure that we're achieving the vision that we want to achieve. So I wanted to make sure that we communicated that with everybody. Jim or Andrew, did you guys have anything to add that we missed tonight?
You guys were great.
Oh, thank you. Jim's the project manager here on this project.
How many elephants are in the herd are going to be in that exhibit?
So we recently talked to our living collections deputy about that. He thinks there could be room for up to 12, but it really depends on if they're male or female. So we've got a matriarchal herd. The females hang together. If we have more babies that are males eventually, as they grow into larger bulls, have to be separated. We are one of the only zoos in the world that socializes the bulls together, so we're hoping that we can be able to do that, but it really depends on male, female, and that specific animal.
So you're doing, part of the initial bond was to move the elephants to another location, like in Gresham or something. So that didn't happen because of the shipping of the elephants?
No, so originally the conversation was, do we need to move them off-site to do construction? And then we realized we didn't, because we have this great phasing plan and we're never going to lose space. But still, for our long-term vision for elephants, do we see having an off-site place as our herd continues to expand? And so we are continuing to look at the feasibility of how would that fit into our elephant management plan? How would we pay for that? And which is our biggest crux, and then what kind of site needs would we have? So we are looking at the former Roslyn Lake property out near Sandy, if any of you remember that site, and we're doing a due diligence on that property right now. So, but you know, a lot goes into it. Is it enough? You know, how steep is it? Is there access? Can you get animals on long trucks on those windy roads? Just looking at the right sites, but then thinking about how could we fund something like that and operate it long term. So we're in our exploration stage on that.
So looking long term, you guys were talking about phase 2. What's phase 2?
Phase 2. phase 2 of the master plan? We'll talk about some of the components of.
Yeah, so the bond project, are you wondering about the next bond projects? Okay, so polar bears then would be the one.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean
Phase
phase
two.
two after
Okay,
everything's
after the
completed
bond
now.
projects,
Right.
okay. Yeah, it's, South America is definitely an area of interest for the zoo, kind of bringing that up. Definitely organizing, I mean, you could talk to this as well, but making it a little bit clearer, the organization by continent, and the Asian animals all being in Asia, and definitely building up South America. I think, yeah,
Africa.
Stellar Cove, it sort of evolves into more South America, and then Africafe definitely gets an overhaul. And then over by where Wild Pigs is, that becomes a place where Asian cats, big cats can kind of move into that area.
And the primates
Primates as well.
are about half funded in this bond that we have, the first part of the primate upgrade, but then the longer term vision is to have treeways and treeway access for the primates. So a lot of zoos are, and Ashley can probably speak to this better, moving up and using space above ground because they're site constrained, and it provides a different dimensional experience with the animals.
Mixed species Africa savanna,
Yeah.
plus expanded condor and rearranging North America.
Just got to get that part funded.
Yeah, we can
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys came to the zoo. Thank you so much for joining us.